welcome to NAPOD, where we provide NA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us to be self-supporting by visiting napod.xyz, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 in the virtual basket. If you're also in AA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, Sobercast. Sobercast features AA speakers and workshops in the same format as NAPOD. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for Sobercast, that's 2 words, on any podcast player app, or go to Sobercast.com. Enjoy the podcast, and thanks for listening.
I would like to introduce our second speaker. She's Rosanne from Utah, and it's her birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
I'm taking it all in. I'm an addict. My name is Rosanne. Hi. And I'm from southern Utah, by way of California and Florida, and I'm just a little NA gypsy. I'm just so grateful and feel so blessed to be here tonight. And it's not even a dream come true. My dreams were never this big. But, I got the call. I'd like to thank, the powers that be and my higher power for the opportunity to be here tonight to share my experience, strength, and hope with you. And when I got the call from the World Office, I was like in a state of shock. It was a wonderful call, but I was in a state of shock. And I remember, the caller said, if you have any questions, call me back. I was like in a state of shock. And he said, in a couple of days, we're going to send you an email, and it'll have all the information on it. And I knew my birthday, last year, I knew that my birthday fell, during the World Convention. So a couple of days later, I get this email. And it, thanked me and invited me here tonight. And it said that I was going to speak on August 19th. And I felt like God, my higher power. And I'm going to say God tonight. God, 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 God. So let's get it over with. If any, okay. So anyway, so I'm sitting at the computer and I'm reading this email. And I thought, wow, August 19th. And I felt like my higher power said, Rosanne, happy birthday. So I want to thank all of you for being here for my birthday. And I know you went through a lot of expense to get here, so no gifts, Anyway, I just feel so good to be here. And Wolfgang, thank you so much. And we did pray on our knees, because I pray on my knees when I pray, because I've gotten on my knees for a lot less. I'll wait till it catches up. And then I prayed with some of the girls, and there's a lot of people here that I know that I've met throughout the years, and I'm so grateful. There's a lot of people I've met just since yesterday, and thank you for your hugs and your well wishes and everything. There's a couple of things that I always talk about when I share, mainly because I need to remember where I came from. Because the longer I'm clean, the further away I am from my last one, and probably the closer to my next one. So I really talk about, some of my really low days out there. And I don't get into a whole drug log. But for the newcomer, when I got here, I was desperate. And thank God for desperation. I was hopeless, helpless, desperate. I felt like a zero. I knew I was no good. I knew I was never, ever going to get clean. My first meeting of Narcotics Anonymous was in the 70s. and it was Saturday Night Live in Venice Beach. Yeah, still happening. And I think I was bussed in from some halfway house or something. And I remember going to the meeting, and it was a big meeting. There were some fine men. There are some fine men in Narcotics Anonymous. And so I remember going to the meeting, and there were these, fine men. And they were with women, and I didn't really care. I was checking the dudes out, and some of them had cars, and I hadn't been with the man with the car in a long time. And I just thought they were so fine. And I was checking them out, and they weren't, coming up to me, and I heard them talking about going out for coffee, and nobody was inviting me to go out for coffee, and I couldn't understand it because I thought I was, looking good. You know how we think we're looking good, we're really not. And, but all these women were coming up to me, and they were giving me their phone numbers, and I'm thinking, I don't want their phone number, what am I going to do with this? And so I got home that night to the halfway house or wherever I was living at the time. And I was thinking about it, and I thought, God, I know I look good. And I thought, I got it. They were sending the women with their phone numbers because they think I'm gay. And there's nothing wrong with being gay, but I'm not. And so anyway, that was my first introduction, my first NA meeting then. And so I was born in 1939 because, today's my 70th birthday. Yeah, how do I look anyway? Yeah. I'm just glad to be alive if I were 80, but I am the new 50. Is that how they say it? The 70 new 50. Anyway. I'm grateful to be here. My clean date is 10/21/81. And thank you. Yeah, that's the important day. So a couple of things that I talk about. One thing, when I was 15, I was bopping around the back seat of a car and I got pregnant. I was doing a little more than bopping. And I got pregnant. And I remember thinking, oh, it's going to be me and this guy, and we were going to get married and have this baby, and it would be wonderful. And I went to him, and I told him I was pregnant, and he said, oh, it's not my baby. And so I remember living with that secret. And I was 6.5 months pregnant, living at home. My mother was in big-time denial, and she had asked me if I was pregnant. And I thought, wow, now I can breathe. And I told her yes, and she said to me, I wish the ground would open up and take me. How could you do this to me? And that's why I had never told her, because I knew that would happen. And anyway, I had the baby just, a few weeks later, I had the baby premature, and I had a daughter, and I had to give her up for adoption. And I tell this story because this is a part of my story in recovery, but I tell this story because one time when I told this story, I had shared that the day that I had my daughter was the most painful day of my life, that I had loved her so much, and that when they took her from me, my arms literally ached to hold her. And I shared it one time, and somebody that had been adopted came up to me. And they said, oh, thank you so much for sharing that because I've been adopted. And I always thought that I did something wrong and my mother didn't love me. But when I heard you say that you loved your daughter more than anything, they felt some love. And so that's why I shared that story. The other story I always talk about because I never want to forget where I came from. I was living in Watts. For those of you that don't know Watts, because some people don't, but almost every city has a Watts. It's a ghetto. It's a ghetto in L.A. And I lived there. My disease of addiction took me there, and I lived on the streets for 1.5 years. I lived nowhere. And I got beat up, and I got raped over and over and over again. And I was like living to use and using to live. And I was just putting one foot in front of the other because I believed the lie, once an addict, always an addict. And I just thought that was just my life, and that was the way it was going to be. And God gave me so many chances, and I used them all up, so I really couldn't ask for anything more. And that was my existence. And my sister, who is my best friend in the whole world, had told me a story when I had about 5 or 6 years clean. She said to me, do you remember that time you were in Watts and I came looking for you and, through a chain of events and people directed her to the neighborhood where I was at or the street. And she said, do you remember when I came and got you and you were living underneath porch steps? And when she started to talk, I started to remember because I had forgotten. And because I forgot, that's why I always share this when I tell my story, because I don't ever want to forget. But this is how she found me. I was in my early 30s, and I was dirty, and I had my hair was matted to my face, and I had a half a mouthful of teeth. Well, she said I just had a couple of teeth in my mouth, and I had abscess sores all over my legs. And what had happened was I had been walking the streets of Watts, and this preacher man came up to me. And he said, you know what, I'd really like to help you, but, I've got a congregation. I don't know, I can't take you home with me. But I have porch steps, and if you want, you could live underneath the porch steps, and I'll bring you some food. And that's what I did. And he took me to the Salvation Army, and I took off my old dirty clothes, and he bought me some new ones, and I went to a gas station, put the new ones on, and I stayed underneath this porch steps. And that's where my sister found me, in that condition. And I had forgotten. I was 5 or 6 years clean at the time, and I had forgotten that. So I always tell that story. I never, ever want to forget. I don't want to get too recovered, so to speak, that I forget where I came from. And it was a painful time in my life. So I like to share that. And so I got here this time because I had been in and out. And I had been to a lot of programs, halfway houses, three-quarter-way houses, you name it, been there, done that. Been to the penitentiary, this nice little lady standing up here. Been to the penitentiary, couldn't wait to get there, they said, what is a nice girl like you doing here? Because I could always clean up on the outside. This last time I didn't, but years ago, I could always clean up on the outside, and I couldn't wait to show them, my scars and tracks and all that, and so when I got here this time, I was 42 years old, and I came in via recovery house, and that was just my route. I'm not promoting any recovery houses or anything because I got clean in Narcotics Anonymous. And but I was in a long-term recovery house in California. And I thought, you know what? I'm never going to get it. I never got it before. Something's seriously wrong with me. I'm never going to get it. Now, the things before that I didn't do that I've done this time, and I've stayed clean, is I got a sponsor this time. I started working steps. I was a service, attended Narcotics Anonymous meetings. When I got it, I started giving it. And I had never done that before. So when I started working the steps, I had 30 days clean. And they, bus you to meetings. And I went to meetings. And I had 30 days clean. And a couple of women that were counselors there called me in the office. And they had just reviewed my case and everything, and I thought, oh, wow, they're going to make me junior probationary staff, 30 days clean. I thought they were going to create this position for me, because I was, all that. And so they called me in the office, these two women, and they said, Rosanne, we've just had a meeting, and we've discussed your treatment, and we just can't get your attention. You will not shut up. So we're going to give you a special treatment. And the special treatment was I had to wear a muzzle for a week, couldn't talk to anybody, and I had to wear a sign. And the sign said, I am not a counselor, I am a resident. Talk about willingness, And I was sitting in that office, and I thought, I can't do this. I'm 42 years old. I thought I was the oldest woman in Narcotics Anonymous. I was beat up. And I thought, I can't do this. But I did it. And what happened for me is the change happened. I started to listen. And at that time, I thought I knew it all. I didn't know that I didn't know. To me, that's a profound statement. I didn't know that I didn't know. I really thought I knew something and that I just couldn't get this thing. But I never, ever listened. So the first meeting after that, and at the time my sponsor, because I had gotten a tough sponsor, I'd seen her at an NA meeting and she was talking and all over the place. I said, that's the woman I need. And so I got her to sponsor me, and at the time that I had the special treatment, and they were taking us to meetings all the time, she said to me, what did you hear at the meeting last night? And I said, I don't know, I don't know. She said, were you talking? I said, no, I wasn't talking. She said, were you sitting in the front? I said, yes, I was sitting in the front. She said, what do you mean you didn't hear anything? And I said, I didn't hear anything. And she said, Rosanne, I'm going to give you an assignment. The next meeting you go to, I want you to sit in the front row, and I want you to lean forward, and I want you to look at the speaker's mouth, and I want you to say this prayer. And the prayer was, dear higher power, please help me to hear the message of Narcotics Anonymous, because if I don't, I'm going to go back out and use, and I'm going to die. So the very first next meeting I went to, thank you. It was in Pasadena. It was a Sunday afternoon meeting, and it's still going on. And I went to the meeting, and there were some bikers there, and their bikes were outside, and there was this guy at the podium, and he had some leather on, and he was tattooed down, and I thought, oh, forget it. Bikers don't stay clean. And I was going to diss him immediately. I didn't want to hear anything he had to say. I figured, I spill more dope than he, this old story. So, but I remembered I had to call my sponsor after that meeting. So I sat in the front row, and I leaned forward, and I looked at the speaker's mouth, and I said that prayer. And this was the very first message I had ever heard in Narcotics Anonymous. This biker dude said, if you don't get on your knees in the morning and ask your higher power to stay clean, and get on your knees at night and thank him, you're going to go back out, you're going to use, and you're going to die. And I knew he was talking to me. And I had never heard that before. And I had been around for about 10 years at the time, in and out. And I thought, wow, And that's when really, the magic started so many times for me, but that was one of the times. I would go to meetings and I started listening, and I used to hear things like how the program works, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And I thought, wow, that's profound. Who wrote that? When did they write that? When was that book published? And anyway, so I started to listen, and I started to hear things. I'm very serious about recovery. I have a passion for Narcotics Anonymous. I love Narcotics Anonymous. Love it. And I will do anything that I could to help the newcomer and the newcomer woman. I love newcomer. I have to be very careful because I want to, but I believe this is life and death, no BS. And that's how I sponsor. If you want to work the steps, I will stay up with you morning, noon, and night to get you through the steps, get you through the traditions, do whatever we have to do to help you stay clean. I do not play around with this program. And if somebody doesn't want to work steps or doesn't want to go to meetings or doesn't want to work steps once they're through the steps with the sponsee, they have got to find another sponsor, because I am really serious about this program. I live our pamphlet, our sponsorship pamphlet. My job is to take you through the steps, not to meet you at court, not to help you with a court case, not to loan you any money, not to watch your babies. Although I've done all that. But that is not my job as a sponsor, and that's just where I'm at. We're all different. Diversity is our strength. Everybody is not for everybody as far as sponsorship goes, because we're all different, and we do things differently. But I don't try to change anybody. If they work the steps will change them. God will change them. I just want to talk a little bit about the steps. I can't go through all of them, but I always like to share some of my experiences while working the steps. The first step, I remember going to my sponsor, and I said, I'm ready for my first step, and I wanted her to give me like a 500 questionnaire thing, because I thought the more questions you answer, the cleaner you get or quicker you get it. And she said, Rosanne, I am the sponsor, and you are the sponsee. I will tell you when it's ready for you to do assignments. She said, for the first step, just don't use no matter what. That is your first step. And I've been doing that for almost 28 years now. Thank you. I remembered the second step. I said to her, you know what, we can jump over that. And she said, really? Why can we jump over it? And I said, well, we can jump over it because I'm not insane. She said, really? She said, how about you going and praying and just thinking about something crazy you did? It doesn't have to be insane, just thinking about something crazy. So I did that. I went. I was thinking about some things. And I thought, oh, yeah, that time in Watts, I remember. And anyway, I had turned a trick. You know, we do what we have to do. Anyway, I turned a trick, and I got $20. And I took the $20, and I went to Woolworth. Is there Woolworth still around? I don't know. Anyway, it's a 5 and dime store. So I went to Woolworth. I spent the $20. I got this outfit. I was walking the streets. And it was about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and I got pulled over. Actually, I was walking. The cops pulled over. And the cop said to me, get in the back seat of my car. And I said, excuse me, officer, what is your probable cause? He said, just get your ass in the back seat of my car. This is a getup I had on. This is the $20. I had a pair of red hot pants. Hot. The hotter they are, the shorter, and they were hot. I had a pair of red hot pants on, a turtleneck red top on. I had a pair of black fishnet stockings, and the capper was this. I had a pair of boots, plastic black boots that crisscross tie out. You guys probably have never even seen them, but they'll come back. Anyway, so I'm walking down the streets of Watts, like a neon light sign, and asking him, what's your probable cause, you know. Anyway. So that was my second step. I took it back to my sponsor. I said, well, you know, maybe, just maybe I was, you know, a little crazy. I only have about 10 more minutes to go, so I want to tell you where I met my higher power. You know, I used to hear people say God is in the steps. You're going to meet your higher power in the steps. I wanted to know what steps so I could hurry up and get there. And so I'm working the steps, and I had done my fourth step, my first fourth step. And when I got to the program, there was a lot of baggage, and there was stuff that I had to get out or I would use again. And I had used behind it for many years. And when my son and daughter were 3 and 2 years old, not the daughter I gave up for adoption because I had never seen her, but I had a son, and he was 3 years old, and I had a daughter that was 2. And I was using pretty heavy. I was in Buffalo. In fact, I met a girl earlier today from Buffalo. I was using, and my old man had gone and gotten a lot of dope and stuff and was on his way to California. And I had my son Russell and my daughter Shelley too. And I was at my mother's, and I left them. I left them with my mother, and I got in the car with my old man, and we drove to California. I left them because I knew he had dope. Now, I'm not really proud to say that. It was very painful. It really affected my kids, affected my life for many years. But that's where the disease of addiction took me. That dope was more important than my kids. Now, I can say that, and some people that aren't there or haven't experienced that may think, God, how could she just say that and it could just come out? When I had about 6 years clean, in our basic text, and it's my favorite line in the basic text, I had read it. And I read the book before, but I had never saw it. But I read it and I internalized it. And my favorite line is this. It says, we were not hopelessly bad, but we were critically ill. And I read that really for the first time, and I internalized it. And I realized, you know what? I'm not a bad person. You know, I'm not a bad person. I was sick. And if I were the person then that I am today, I would have been a wonderful, wonderful mother. And I know that. I know that to my innermost being. And the more writing I've done and the more sharing I've done, the more healing that takes place. So I'm doing my fourth step, and I never got my son and daughter back again because I continued to use. And I'd go to visit them, and I'd use just so I could feel better to go see them. It was just a nightmare. And so I'm doing my inventory, and I'm writing all this stuff down. I'm feeling like a piece of you-know-what, and I didn't know the part about not being hopelessly critically ill, but not hopelessly bad, but critically ill. I didn't know all that yet, but I went through the motions of doing the steps, and And I remember getting to a part in the fourth step, and it was about my son. My son, Russell, had committed suicide when he was 18. And I never got a chance to make an amends to him. And so I'm writing this, I'm getting ready to write it, and I call my sponsor, and I said, I can't write it. I felt choked. I felt like if I wrote about it, I was going to use, and if I didn't, I was going to use. And she said to me, honey, just jump over it. Just jump over it. We'll get to that part. And I trusted her, and I believed her, and when it was time to make my amends step, my son was the top on the list, and I took my sponsor this list, and she said, okay, now it's time to make that amends to Russell. So she had me go home, pray, and write a letter of amends to my son Russell, and I took this back to her. And I remember sitting in her living room, and she had some incense burning and candles, and I wrote the letter to Russell, and I said, dear Russell, I am so sorry for all the harm that I caused you. And if I were the woman then that I am today, I would have been a wonderful mother. And I signed it, Love, Mom. And that day, and tonight, right now, because I always feel this when I share it, I felt my son's presence. And I felt that my son forgave me. And when I felt that, I forgave myself just a little bit. But that's how steps work for me. It's a forgiving process. And it was wonderful. And I remember sitting in a meeting. I had did my fifth step and got all this stuff out, and I didn't feel the burning bush or the glow or anything. I just felt like, I remember this guy, Pepe, and I know a lot of you know him. I had seen him at a meeting. Yes, Pepe, we love you, Pepe. And thank you. And I remember saying, oh, Pepe, I did my fifth step. And he said, oh, good girl, you've arrived. And it was wonderful. And anyway, so it was a month later, and I'm in a meeting. And they were talking about the 11th step. And they were talking about God and higher power. And what do you call your higher power? And is he up there? Is he in here? Or where is he? And I remember sitting there, and I was listening. And all of a sudden, a feeling came over me. And I knew that God is. And I've known that God is ever since. And I believe for me how that works, I believe that my understanding of my higher power is deep within me. And the more garbage I get out, when I did that fifth step and got out a lot of that garbage, then higher power revealed itself to me because all that garbage was out. And when I get jammed up now and I have a conflict with someone or resentment or something, when I write and when I pray and get that stuff out, I always feel closer. My journey through Narcotics Anonymous has been phenomenal. I got clean in California. I moved to Florida. I was there a few years ago. I only have a few minutes. I'm going to rush fast forward. But a few years ago, I moved to St. George, Utah. And NA is very baby there. I would go to meetings and a lot of violations. I'm thinking, oh no, not another business meeting, not another area, and I don't want to teach people. I just want to go to meeting. And my sponsor said, Rosanne, UONA. So, I'd go to area and people didn't know who Jimmy K was. And I had bumper stickers on my van. And I remember calling World, my friend at World, and I said, oh, my God, and he said, do you want to help change and do something for St. George? And I said, yes, just tell me what to do. He said, you get a sponsee, and you take her through the steps, and then let her get a sponsee, and on and on. And I can tell you one sponsee's good. I got 3. Started taking them through the steps. We'd get in the van. We'd be going to support a meeting, an hour, 2 hours away. I'd get to the van after one meeting. I'd get to the van.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please help us improve our ranking so others can find us by putting a review on Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast index. NAPOD is ad-free thanks to the folks supporting the show with $1 or more per month. If you enjoy listening, you can join them by going to napod.xyz and looking for the donate link. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.